What is going on, pro wrestling fans? We are live on a Monday night following quite the episode of Monday Night Raw. Of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Welcome back to another edition of the post-show reaction, this time for WWE Monday Night Raw. It's the Raw following Survivor Series War Games, and we're now on the fast track to not only Saturday night's main event, but just around the corner, the Royal Rumble, which means we're that much closer to WrestleMania 41. A lot had went down on tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw. We saw some advancements in storylines that involved some of the top stars like CM Punk, Seth Rollins. We had a major return, which we will get to in a little bit. We had a development in the tournament that will determine the inaugural Women's Intercontinental Champion. Of course, we also had the huge segment between Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods celebrating the 10-year anniversary for the New Day Trio. We even had a special matchup here between Dirty Dominic Mysterio and Gunther. Like I said, a lot to unpack on this episode of the post-show reaction. Kevin, what's going on, my man? Thank you for coming in for the post-show reaction. Welcome back to the live. We missed you on the Survivor Series post-show reaction, so I'm glad to see you here tonight with us, joining in on a Monday night, especially given what we saw tonight on Monday Night Raw. A lot to talk about. I want to hear from you guys on what you thought about tonight's episode of Raw, but we're going to go ahead and jump right into it, beginning with the opening segment. CM Punk, good to see you, man. Good. It was a banger episode of Raw. I 100% agree with you, Kevin, especially how about that opener, right? CM Punk comes to the ring, obviously addresses the crowd, talking about War Games, talking about teaming up with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, as well as Paul Heyman and what that favor could be. Of course, a lot of people are asking, what's that favor? What is the favor? Well, at this point in time, I don't even think CM Punk knows what that favor is. He has something in mind, but I don't think it's something that we're going to be, aware of until it comes to fruition. CM Punk knows that he has it in his back pocket, but right now, his focus, just like many of us here on the post-show reaction live, is on WrestleMania, because now I feel like we're going to start seeing a lot of momentum leading to Las Vegas Allegiant Stadium, where WrestleMania 41 will take place. CM Punk, of course, got on top of the second rope there, pointed at the sign where WrestleMania would usually be. But of course, Seth Rollins, his arch nemesis, would come out. He would interrupt CM Punk during this promo, and he talked about how his one regret was that he should have knocked CM Punk down when he had the shot, when he returned a year ago in Chicago at War Games. And now we're seeing advancement in that storyline. We saw him get physical, right? CM Punk and Seth Rollins traded blows there. They would have to be broken up by Sami Zayn. And of course, San Fran 5 even referenced him, Jey Uso, Mr. Yeet himself. And it was the first time in a while that we had seen Seth Rollins get physical, right? And now on top of that, we're seeing him interact with some of his friends, Sammy and Jay, guys that he's went to war with against the Bloodline, guys he's been to war with in terms of being on the opposition. And I gotta say, they already introduced enough intrigue between CM Punk and Seth Rollins. I think that's the destination we're going to go for WrestleMania 41. But how are we going to get there? Because in the meantime, damn right, what's up, Laura? What's up, Laura? Let's talk wrestling. Love seeing the early interactions here within the chat. Keep them coming. We talk about that opening segment. Welcome to the live, by the way, everyone. We talk about that opening segment and seeing Seth Rollins interact with Sami Zayn in the way that he did. You know, it really tested the memory, the knowledge of a lot of the fans that have been keeping up to date with the content of the daily and weekly show. He talked about Sami Zayn, like, how are you going to team with the Bloodline, knowing that Roman Reigns wants to be on top again, knowing that he wants to rule the WWE with an iron fist and control the whole landscape, something he's already done for years, something that they had sacrificed time, energy, blood, sweat, tears to bring down at WrestleMania 40. He alluded to that because Sami Zayn, of course, had to fight Roman Reigns at Elimination Chamber in 2023 unsuccessfully. Seth Rollins has had his battles with Roman Reigns, and he helped Cody Rhodes finish his story, ending the 1,316 title day reign for Roman Reigns. What's going on, Sean? Welcome to the to the live. What did you guys think of Monday Night Raw? We're just opening up here, kind of refreshing, talking about the opening segment between Punk, Rollins, and Zayn. I, for one, obviously am a big fan of Punk. You guys know that. I like Seth Rollins. I love Sami Zayn. But that interaction I really took away was the Sami Zayn and Seth Rollins stuff. Because Seth Rollins got in Sami Zayn's face and was talking about how can you team with Roman Reigns? And Sami Zayn is the one that really instigated it. He kicked him to another level when he told Seth Rollins, I know about Roman Reigns. We all know about Roman Reigns and what he's capable of doing and what he's already done. But he told Seth Rollins to his face, you started it. 10 years ago, when you hit him with the chair, breaking up the Shield, you were the one that built that level of insecurity. You were the one that turned Roman Reigns into what he is. And I'm telling you, it all stems from that. Seeing Seth Rollins and the evolution of his character, as well as the parallels seen between him and Roman Reigns and where they've gone with their careers. That is your Batman and Joker. Those guys are meant to do battle forever. But at the same time, at the flip side, Seth Rollins points the finger at Sami Zayn. And he tells him, you want to talk about hitting him with a chair when you did the same thing at the Royal Rumble event last year, 2023. Again, the parallels, knowing that this is what they have endured. They've endured the abuse. They've endured the violence between Roman Reigns and whoever was in his way. I love seeing the interactions, guys. What's going on, Tyler? What's going on, Luis? Sean, I'll answer your question in a bit here, but I want to keep everyone coming. Keep coming. That interaction between them set up the main event, which we'll get to in a little bit. Seth Rollins and Sami Zayn, which I thought we wouldn't have seen in a main event of Monday Night Raw, a random Monday Night Raw at that. But that opening segment really set the tone for what I thought was a monumental episode of Monday Night Raw. And it wasn't just that. Salute to everyone and you in the J area. Tyler, appreciate it. Sean, to answer your question, do I think the New Day will break up? So heading into that segment, I thought for sure Xavier Woods was going to turn on Kofi Kingston. Right. We knew Big E was going to be involved. Sanford 5, I miss Big E too. But it was nice seeing him. We knew he was going to be involved. And to see that, I was for sure certain that Xavier Woods was going to attack Big E and establish so much heat. Put him over as a heel. Kofi Kingston would be the baby face. There's their first feud, and that's where we're going to go. But they switched it on us. Big E comes out and wants to be the manager for the New Day, and immediately I'm thinking, this is awesome. This is great. We're going to see Big E on TV again. We're going to see the trio that is the New Day back together again in so long. We haven't seen the three of them together since Big E suffered that attack. Suffered that injury, I should say, from Rich Holland breaking his neck. And to see them turn on Big E. So it appears to me, to answer your question, Sean, I don't think they're breaking up per se. Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston seem to be on the same page. They seem like they're going to be sticking together. But I think the moniker, the name, the New Day, might change. They're going to break the group up as it is, without Big E. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods are going to move forward as heels, as it appears, if you're asking me now. They're not going to break up. But I do think the New Day, as we know it, is over. Big E's done. He's not going to be a part of this iteration. It's going to be Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods as heels, which I'm all for. Something fresh, something new. Kofi and Xavier, two of the most, experienced members on the roster. And to see them have a fresh start here, I'm all for it. I hate to see Big E out of it, but that looks like where we're going with it. Tyler asks, who attacked Jey Uso? Any thoughts on it? I think it's quite evident. At the conclusion of the episode, Drew McIntyre returns, which I had completely forgot about for a second there. I mean, obviously we knew Drew McIntyre was waiting in the wings at some point. I think he was going to make a return for the Royal Rumble. But to see Jey Uso get attacked, I think everyone's immediate thoughts, Seth Rollins. His pride got the best of him. And obviously he's upset with Sammy and Jey Uso. So I think immediately we're thinking it's gonna be Seth. But he kept pleading with Sammy, saying, it wasn't me. Have you asked Punk? And in that moment, I'm thinking, well, I don't think it's Punk. I don't see what the motive would be. Sammy suffers a loss, and Seth Rollins gets in with the roll-up, the classic roll-up, and wins. But Drew McIntyre comes out in the end, attacks Sami Zayn. I think that's our answer. Who was one of the first guys that did not like Jey Uso joining Monday Night Raw? Did not trust him. It was Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre is on a mission to climb up the ranks of the main event scene, and main event Jey Uso has swooped in and has taken a spot of his own in the main event scene. So why wouldn't Drew McIntyre want to attack Jey Uso? Then on top of that, who teamed with Jey Uso at Survivor Series? CM Punk, who Drew McIntyre has a beef with, as we all know. And then, of course, Sami Zayn is a part of the equation. Drew McIntyre, a welcome return to the WWE's main event scene. I'm looking forward to it. I'm suspecting we're going to get Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre fairly soon. But the picture on the main roster here is filling up quite nicely. Seeing all these guys come back. Seth Rollins has come back. Drew McIntyre's back. We might have to do without Bronson Reed for a bit because apparently he suffered an injury at War Games. But when he's ready to come back and is 100%, we are back on track. Tyler also says, I think it's a double heel for Big E. Do you think Big E... Double heel for Big E. To see them, like a double turn on Big E, like I said, was very surprising. I was expecting them, one or the other. But they kept hinting at a breakup. They kept forcing this breakup angle. So part of me was like, are they going to go through with it? I don't know. And luckily they didn't. They're still a tag team. They're just going to go heel without Big E. Kevin says, not going to lie, I want Xavier Woods to win. I'd rather have heels win majority of the time. I'm inclined to agree with Kevin here. Because if the baby faces win and they dispose of the heels more often than not, then what are we doing? I like to see the babyface struggle. I want to have that win felt earned. So I compare it to this. I look at like the way the new bloodline has been booked against the OG bloodline. I was thinking the OG bloodline was going to lose at Survivor Series because if they beat Solo Sikoa's team again, which they did, it kind of lessens it, right? I mean, I think personally, you got to have the heels go over so many times. That way, when the babyfaces finally win, it's cathartic, it's therapeutic, it feels earned. And with that being said, I do agree. The heels should win the majority of the time. That way, when the babyface wins, feud's over. Where else do we go from there? Sanfran5 says, I never thought I'd see Kofi turn heel. It is weird to see Kofi Kingston turn heel. Because, there was a short time there in the early days of the New Day when they were trying to get over. The crowd wasn't with them. This was back in like 2014, 2015. The crowd wasn't with them. This power of positivity thing, it felt forced. It didn't feel organic. We weren't into it. I'll confess, around the time they first started, I was a part of the crowd that kind of booed the New Day. Because it was just like, what is this, right? They kind of teased this new age nation of domination, and they came out with this like preacher type of gospel gimmick, and it wasn't for a lot of people. But it was a short time being. Of course, he turned babyface, and it's hard to hate Kofi Kingston. Kofi Kingston has an infectious smile to him. I love his energy. His moveset is that of a babyface. So to see him as a heel again with Xavier Woods is a welcome sight for me because it's something fresh. It's something new. It can revitalize their careers and maybe put them on a run for another tag team title run. Because I'm going to tell you right now, just talking about it, I love Finn Balor. I'm a fan of JD McDonough, but this title reign isn't it for me. They've only defended the titles twice. I see what they're doing with Finn, trying to build him up against Damian and the little feud they have between Dominic and he. But the tag team titles don't need to be associated with them. So maybe the New Day or whatever the name they want to go by now, maybe we slide it onto them. Maybe the War Raiders come out with the titles. But regardless, this is a big thing for the tag team division, which I think sorely needed a little bit of an oomph. And I'm hoping that does it. Tyler says, I like Shinsuke Nakamura's entrance. I'm a fan of it, especially the version that they had at War Games with the whole mask. It has a samurai gimmick to it. I like the remix. It maintains a lot of the characteristics of that original NXT theme, which I think we all love. But if you want to get them over as a heel, you kind of have to tweak it so that they can't really sing along with it. So I get that point of view. I love what they're doing with Shinsuke. I like the darker tone, the whole emphasis on the mist, like a Great Muta or Tajiri. I like what they're doing with Shinsuke, and I'm open to it. I was surprised that he won at the Survivor Series, defeating LA Knight. Give me a yeah in the chat. At the Survivor Series, I was surprised. But I'm down for it. It's something new. And hopefully it moves LA Knight up the card and maybe pushes him to the main event scene. Because I think LA Knight certainly has all the makings to be the megastar that he says he is. Tyler also says, I can't wait for NXT Deadline. Me too. I'm really looking forward to Deadline, specifically for the Iron Survivor matches. I think it's one of the more innovative and entertaining concepts that they have brought up, certainly to NXT, but just to WWE. I feel like NXT has kind of been like this proving ground, not only for the roster and for the talent that's up and coming, but for concepts. And I wouldn't be surprised if this Iron Survivor concept makes its way to the main roster at some point, like how War Games did. But I am looking forward to Deadline. I love the Iron Survivor matchups. Keep an eye out. I think at some point during the week, probably Wednesday, I'll be uploading a video for my predictions for the NXT Deadline event. I'd love to hear some of your guys' prediction as well when that video comes up. But I'm looking forward to it. The men's is shaping up really well. When you have guys like Javon Evans, Wes Lee, Ethan Page is also involved. The women's is already stacked up with Stephanie Vaquer and Julia Zarya is also in there. A lot to appreciate and a lot to look forward to for NXT Deadline. Sanford 5, don't let this distract you from the fact that R-Truth beat Butch clean. This is true. This is true. What are you guys thinking about how they're presenting this feud between R-Truth and Pete Dunne? I'm a fan of both. I think R-Truth is one of the most entertaining wrestlers that they have on this roster. I can't wait for him to be in the Hall of Fame because I think he's earned that right. But the fact that he beat Butch or Pete Dunne clean, I think Pete Dunne eventually has to get his comeuppance here because I think Pete Dunne is a great wrestler. We've seen what he's done in NXT and as the NXT UK champion, but I'm all for it. As long as in the end, I think Pete Dunne should go over. He needs to go over in this feud to make sure he's a credible threat and a credible heel for the main roster. But great point there. Fun matchup, I will say. And I love how R-Truth, he sticks to the story of how John Cena is his childhood hero. I love it. I think it's hilarious. Kevin says, Xavier Woods versus Kofi reminds me of Jeff Hardy versus Matt Hardy. I know Kofi is not related to Xavier, but they're so close and have made many good memories over the years. I agree 100%. A lot of times, tag teams, when they're together for so long, it is like family. So I get it. The whole Matt and Jeff comparison. Kofi versus Xavier is something I didn't want to see. I wanted to see New Day stick together. And like I said, I think they are. I don't think they're breaking up. I think what they're doing is distancing themselves from Big E. But Kofi versus Xavier does have a lot of potential because those guys know each other so well. They've worked together for a decade. I think their styles are definitely something that would make a great matchup. So maybe not in the immediate future, but certainly before they decide to hang him up, Xavier versus Kofi, I think with the proper build-up and the proper timing, could be a great matchup. Tyler asks, who better NXT tag division? Oh my God. Who's better, the NXT tag division or the main roster? Do you have thoughts on it? So this is a good question because in a previous video, I did talk about the NXT tag team division. This was prior to what they were doing on NXT TV, where Ava had to deal with all of these tag teams, jumping each other in the backup, and now we have this battle royal that's being announced. I think the main roster still has better talent-wise, because you look at the talent that is spread across both rosters. Motor City Machine Guns, the Street Profits, we have the LWO, we have Legado del Fantasma, we have obviously the Judgment Day, the War Raiders, the New Day. I like, in terms of talent, the main roster's division so much better. I just think they need to present it better. I think they need to treat the tag team titles a little bit better. The Motor City Machine Guns have done a great job with their tag team titles. We haven't seen them in a matchup in a couple weeks now, so I'm hoping we reestablish them and have some kind of challengers in line for them. And I am very curious to see what Adam Pearce was referring to when he talked about Finn Balor and his titles and how they're going to be defending the tag team titles pretty soon. But I do like the NXT tag team division. They have been improving. I'm a fan of Frazier and Axiom. I don't think they're due for a title reign much longer. I think whoever wins this battle royal, look for them to win the tag team titles. I think it's time that they're going to move them off them. As of who will do it, that's interesting. Maybe a team like OTM, maybe potentially someone like I'm just speculating here, obviously. But what about the D'Angelo family? I would like to see Stax and Luca win the tag titles. You know, Tony D'Angelo, he's already the NXT North American champion. Why not complete the ensemble and have them win it? That's just me, but I'm looking forward to it. Breaking news 5 days ago, Eric Bischoff's MLW pay-per-view one shot, and he is on NXT too. This, awesome. I love when we're able to branch the conversation to other promotions. We know that NXT will be showcasing Eric Bischoff this upcoming episode of NXT. I love it. I'm a fan of Bischoff. I love his work as the Raw general manager because I grew up during that. I didn't have an opportunity to watch him on Nitro, obviously. I was just a kid. But then on top of that, him having that one-shot pay-per-view with MLW, very exciting because he hasn't been associated with professional wrestling in a long time. He's had some one-offs with AEW, some appearances with the WWE, but in terms of creative, I would very much like to see how Eric Bischoff approaches this for a professional wrestling promotion in the year 2024. I'm a big fan of Eric Bischoff. I'd love to hear some of your guys' thoughts on him. What are some memories, some of your favorite thoughts on Eric Bischoff? What are some of your favorite moments in his career? I'm just talking about the women's tag division too. And you know, that's another thing too, because I think what gets lost in NXT, they do have a great NXT women's division. Arguably, not even arguably. They have the best women's division, top to bottom. Just to name some: Roxanne Perez, Julia, Vaquer, Zarya, Cora Jade, Kalani Jordan. And then every now and then we see someone like Jordan Grace come out. They're stacked, right? But they do have solid tag teams in there as well. We've seen Lash Legend and Miss Jakara Jackson have opportunities against Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair, opening the door for more, interactions between the three brands. And I think what they've done with Lash Legend specifically has been great. So just not even the tag team division, but the women's division, top to bottom, I think you can make the argument is better than the men's division at NXT. I mean, aside from guys like Trick Williams and Obafemi, who have real star quality to them, you have Ridge Holland and Ethan Page, which I'm fans of, right? But top to bottom, that women's division is the premier characteristic of that show. There have been times where they opened and closed NXT because of how great they are. And it's only getting better because they're still in developmental. They're still, honing in on their craft. To see them in the main roster, that's why we have the Intercontinental and the U.S. titles being introduced, because not only have they become such an attraction for audiences, but the talent that is coming on its way to the main roster, it lends itself to have these mid-card titles, to present more opportunities for the stars of today and tomorrow. Kevin talks about Moose. Thoughts on Moose from TNA. So TNA, it's well documented. I won't front with you guys. Not the biggest TNA fan, but I do enjoy keeping up with them. I keep up with ever since Hard to Kill in earlier this year, where they had revamped back to TNA. Because for me, I was watching TNA from 2008 to 2012, around those years. I would come in every now and then. I remember the Aces and Eight angle. I remember Eli Drake. I remember EC3. But Moose specifically, and his work with the system, it's that typical heel group. But I think Moose is destined for so much more. Like, this guy is a hulking figure who I think, when he puts it all together, can be a major star. And he has been. He's a two-time champion in TNA as a world champion, X Division champion, and he's one of the premier guys for that promotion. I'm a fan of Moose, but I won't front with you. I have to do more homework and watch more TNA. I'm not going to lie to you there. Tyler says, I think WWE needs to bring back NXT versus SmackDown versus Raw, or NXT versus main roster. I like that concept, but here's the thing. When they did it in 2019, that was when NXT was treated as a third brand. You had your guys like the Undisputed Era. You had Aleister Black. You had Keith Lee, Damian Priest, Ciampa, Gargano. They were treated like a third brand. So it could be presented as such. It could be presented as an invasion. And I loved it. That Survivor Series in 2019 is one of my favorite Survivor Series because of the match quality. And because we got to see 5 versus 5 versus 5. In fact, I had done a video for the Friday 5 count on some of my favorite teams from the Survivor Series, and I included the men's Survivor Series team for NXT. I love that episode, or that edition of the event itself. As for the whole bringing it back, I think it would be difficult because NXT is presented as developmental. Yeah, it can be argued it's a third brand because of the CW deal, and I like that idea. But it would be very difficult to put up against a guy like Trick Williams versus a Gunther or a Cody Rhodes, who are well established. You don't want to hurt the credibility of Trick Williams, but at the same time, do you really want to put him on the same tier as a Cody or a Gunther? I think what we would be much more suited for is a TNA versus NXT event. I think that very much would be something I'm interested in because it would get guys from NXT some exposure to another audience. It would get guys like from TNA to exposure to a bigger audience. I mean, look at what it's done for Joe Hendry, right? What they were able to do with Joe Hendry and capitalize on the momentum for him was astronomical. It got him so over with the crowd. It's just a shame that TNA didn't pull the trigger and have him win the World Championship, whether it was at Slammiversary or at Bound for Glory. But I would very much be interested in a TNA versus NXT event for sure. What's going on, Peter Parker? Welcome to the live stream. He says, hey, your friendly neighborhood wrestling fan has arrived. We appreciate you stopping by and talking pro wrestling with us. We're just answering questions here, addressing Monday Night Raw, which was a great episode as well. Sanford 5 says, yo, Peter, did you face a guy named Bonesaw in a cage match? Well, isn't that a little throwback to 2002? A classic 5-star matchup there between Peter and Bonesaw McGraw. I love that line where he tells Peter, obviously, he says, I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime. Kevin says, y'all remember Nexus? I was like 7 years old, and Wade Barrett's Nexus were destroying everyone. Man, I remember that too. So you were 7. I was like 12, I think. Yeah, 2010. So I was like 12 years old when the Nexus came through. And I remember watching that version of NXT when it was a competition show. And we saw that it was guys like Wade Barrett. I remember Skip Sheffield, who would go on to be Ryback, obviously. Bryan Danielson was there, who was the hot name going into it. So seeing them come into that debut and wreak havoc. Do you remember when Bryan Danielson, or Daniel Bryan, whichever you call him by, had gotten Justin Roberts by the tie, choked him out, and was causing him to get choked out, and that got Bryan fired. I mean, like, that was certainly something to see. My only thing against that was SummerSlam and having John Cena beat, I think it was Wade Barrett and Justin Gabriel, might have been the final two. And I really think Nexus should have went over, because like we talked about earlier, the heels should win, because otherwise they lose credibility against the babyface. So having Cena defeat the Nexus alongside his team members at SummerSlam, it immediately started on the wrong foot for me. But I do remember the Nexus. Love their theme song too. I thought that was a great theme song. Tyler says, I want to see TNA versus WWE or NXT War Games. Any thoughts on it? Maybe next year. I think we're probably more likely to see TNA versus NXT. I think the WWE doesn't want to risk having TNA against WWE because they've already been presented on NXT. So again, association via developmental. You don't want to have guys like a Joe Hendry or a Moose being presented as lesser than against your guys like Cody Rhodes and Gunther, just to throw out names there. I think we're way more suited to have TNA versus NXT. I would love to see a War Games match between the two. Maybe even like a traditional Survivor Series matchup where it's just elimination. But I would love to see that for sure. It's just difficult booking that because you want to present both shows, both promotions in a positive light. You don't want to bury TNA and have NXT go over, and vice versa. You don't want to have NXT presented as lesser than Total Nonstop Action, But that's definitely something I would love to see. Peter Parker asks, were you there, Sanford 5? I got my butt kicked. He responds, Dave Meltzer was going crazy for your match, man. I mean, we all were. To see that matchup in a cage. He didn't sign up for a cage match. Remember that. He was asking them to take the chain off and they wouldn't do it. But nonetheless, we know who got the win in the end, right? The good guys always win. Kevin says, Cena was just different at that time. Super Cena. Yeah, I was a big fan of John Cena when he first won the WWE title. He was still rapping, had the jerseys. But once it got to like 2010-ish, 2009-ish, I think a lot of us kind of felt a little bit sour when it came to John Cena and the way he was just beating everybody. And I don't blame him. That's just how he was presented. That's just how he was booked. So I can't blame him. And I'm glad to see he's all getting his flowers now and just genuinely and universally being liked by a large portion of the audience. But I will say that time against the Nexus, it was tough, because Cena was winning. It was everywhere, right? I still think to this day, Wade Barrett and the Nexus should have won that matchup. I mean, I remember also watching it where it was SummerSlam 2010. We saw a big DDT on John Cena on the concrete. It was an exposed mat. So he got DDT'd on the concrete, which ideally does a lot of damage. But he comes back and he beats Justin Gabriel, I'm pretty sure it was Gabriel, and Wade Barrett to secure the win at the Survivor Series. And it was tough being a Cena fan because a lot of people didn't like him because of how he was pushed. And I feel like that's the same thing that went with Roman Reigns. A lot of people were against Roman Reigns because, one, that wasn't our chosen guy. Mine was Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. But also just the manner in which he was booked. They were these overpowered superhero baby faces. And to see them now get the appreciation that they've earned is great. I love seeing that. As for Monday Night Raw, real quick, I want to just touch on this. Gunther versus Dirty Dominic, man. I really enjoyed that matchup. They made Dominic Mysterio look credible against Gunther. I mean, when he hit that frog splash on Gunther, there was a part of me that was like, whoa, is he really going to sneak a win against Gunther? But not only that, the frog splash, it just looked nice. It was a clean frog splash by Dirty Dominic Mysterio. And to see him presented in the way he was against Gunther, that was awesome. I love seeing that. The interactions between him and Finn Balor have certainly been entertaining. And now we know that Finn is going to face Gunther at Saturday night's main event for the world title, which is shaping up to be a big show on itself as well, because we're going to have the inaugural U.S. champion for the women's division being named. We have Liv Morgan versus Io Sky. Of course, Gunther versus Finn. Cody versus Kevin. Really looking forward to Saturday night's main event, so I can't wait for that show. Kevin asks, Jose, do you remember the ECW invasion on Raw? I thought the concept was the coolest thing ever. ECW was awesome. My first championship belt was an ECW title, the one Christian held from 2009 to 2010. I loved ECW. Obviously, you and I are a little bit too young to have watched the original incarnation of ECW. But that first run in 2006, where we saw like Rob Van Dam had won the title, and held the WWE title and the ECW title simultaneously. I don't know if you remember, but there was a one-off show. It was the week before the first episode of WWE ECW. And it was ECW versus WWE. Matches there. I think there was like a battle royal when it was like both brands competing against each other. And Rob Van Dam versus Rey Mysterio. ECW was just so cool because it was different. It was an alternative to the WWE. Now over time, you talk about Christian, it changed and it became like the third brand. It became, very much what NXT had become. But some of my favorite memories from ECW. Love CM Punk when he was there. I was a big fan of the Christian title reign because they kind of gave him this opportunity. We saw him win the TNA World title. We saw him win the NWA title in TNA. So to see him presented as a main eventer there was awesome. And to see him kind of helm the ECW brand as his brand, I thought was really cool too. Christian does not get enough credit for how great he is. But that time with the ECW invasion, anytime there's a good invasion angle, it's hard not to like it. Whether it's the Nexus, whether it's ECW, whether it's when NXT did it, like I just love a good invasion angle. Always fun to see chaos happening that results in some kind of entertainment. Tyler says, I'm born with autistic. I love pro wrestling. It helps me out with my mental health, and pro wrestling is art, man. He says, I want to see Jacob Fatu versus Muth. Well, that's awesome. First of all, I want to thank you and appreciate you for joining the live. That way you can share your love of pro wrestling with us, and we can share it with you, because that's what the J area is all about. It's all about including everybody who is a fan, whether they're old, whether they're young, they're new, they're diehard. I don't care. I don't think any of us care. As long as you have a love for professional wrestling, you are welcomed here to talk about some of your favorite matches, favorite memories, what's going on currently or in the past. So I appreciate you coming along and voicing your love for professional wrestling here. And I'm glad that it helps you with your mental health as well, because that above all else is very important. And if it's a source of entertainment for you and it puts you in a good mood, then I say keep going and keep watching. And as for your request here to see Jacob Fatu versus Moose, I mean, Jacob Fatu against anyone, really. That man's a beast. To see what he's able to do for a man of his size and what he was able to do at War Games, impressive. I mean, the man moves like a cruiserweight. The springboard moonsault that he does on a regular is absolutely ridiculous. Him against Jacob Fatu, him versus Moose would be fantastic. I mean, talk about powerhouses. But you have Moose, who is very much a powerhouse. And then you have Jacob Fatu, who could, do it all. That certainly would be a fantastic matchup. Wrestling is getting me through finals right now. Finals week has me stressing. Appreciate your content because it's getting me through a tough start of the week. Well, first of all, I want to say, good luck with your finals. And I appreciate you. Again, I appreciate you all for spending your time here with us talking about pro wrestling. And if this is an opportunity to relieve a little bit of stress for whatever it may be, especially if it's finals week for you, buddy, then I'm glad to be able to have this opportunity to share this time with you guys. So I appreciate you again for being in the chat, watching the videos, and also, yeah, pro wrestling gets us through a lot, whether it's finals, whether it's a tough work week, or whatever the case may be. That's the one thing I always look forward to at the end of my day, is like, hey, I get the chance to watch some of my favorites fight it out. Jacob Fatu's entrance was fire. Jacob Fatu is just fire. If he doesn't win a world title, I'm going to be super surprised, because he has all the makings. They're just recently allowing him to open up in his promos. Kevin also says he's a solo main eventer in my eyes. I would have to agree with you. The presentation. He deserves an IC or US title run. That's what I would do first. Have him warm up to it. Have him win the US title. And just be a dominant champion. This guy is the next evolution. Because if you look at the way the NOIE family, the bloodline, has been presented, we have guys like the Wild Samoans. Then the next evolution, you could argue, was like Yokozuna, right? A big man who could splash from the top rope, moved like someone his size should not have moved. And after that, obviously we have The Rock and Rikishi. And then you have Umaga, who was a freak of nature. I mean, this man was a powerhouse. The Samoan bulldozer. You guys remember Umaga? And now we have Jacob Fatu. World champion material. I don't care how long it takes. But he's got it. I do care how long it takes. But he has to become a world champion. Do you like AEW? In one day, maybe I'm starting my own pro wrestling promotion someday. Hey, best of luck to you. And if you ever need someone to help, promote the pro wrestling promotion there, or maybe do a little bit of commentary, or maybe backstage interview, hey, I'm available. So I hope so. That'd be awesome to see. Love seeing more promotions being brought up. More wrestling is good news for everybody. Do I like AEW? I am a fan of AEW. I don't comment a lot about All Elite Wrestling because, again, I go on like a supply and demand type of deal. And I notice a lot of the videos, a lot of the interactions come with WWE. So I watch AEW all the time. I am a fan. I do think they're in a little bit of a rough patch here for the last year. but I'm a fan. I watch it often. If you were to ask me, if you were to really, twist my arm here and make me choose, I'm more inclined to say WWE because I grew up watching that. But I do have a love and appreciation for All Elite Wrestling and what they do. It's an alternative, as it should be. They should be presented as an alternative. Now, whether or not people are fans of that, that's fine. That's your opinion. But I think it's important to have competition because it helps elevate each other. I'm a big fan in AEW when it comes to guys like Swerve Strickland, Will Ospreay. I love their work. I loved Bryan Danielson and Samoa Joe, but obviously those two aren't really there anymore. Hangman, I'm a fan of Hangman Adam Page. I was a fan of MJF, but recently he's kind of fallen off for me. I don't know. His stuff with Punk I thought was the best stuff that AEW had presented, but since then it hasn't really been the same. So right now, if you ask me who was my favorite in AEW, I would say it's really close between a Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland. Those two are my guys. I like Danny Garcia. I'm a fan of his and what he's been doing, especially now that he's won the TNT title. But like I said, I'm more inclined to talk WWE because a lot of you guys are responding and reacting to the WWE content. If at any time you guys want more AEW content, I'm all game. That's why I do the prediction videos and the pay-per-view reaction videos for them. I also forgot to say Darby Allin. I do love Darby Allin. He's one of my favorites as well. But I'm more inclined to talk about WWE. Now, that's not to say I have my issues with AEW. I'm a positive guy. I try to stay positive and talk well about everything because I think there's too much negativity, especially when it comes to pro wrestling fans. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's like a whole tribalism between the two where it's like if you like AEW, you're not supposed to like WWE. If you like WWE, you're not supposed to like AEW. I don't believe in that. I love pro wrestling. So when I see AEW, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch WWE. When I have a chance, I watch TNA. When I have a chance, sometimes I watch New Japan every now and then. But nobody's perfect, right? Kevin asks, thoughts on Rhea Ripley pinning Liv Morgan for the win. I didn't appreciate it because she's the current women's world champion. I thought it was quite the choice, honestly. I didn't think that she would get the pinfall. Heading into it, I thought that we were going to have like the SmackDown brand more associated. I thought it was going to be someone like a Bayley or Bianca pinning someone like Tiffany Stratton or Candice LeRae. That's the approach I thought they were going to go. When I saw I'm going to get to that in a second. When I saw that she had pinned Ripley, I thought for sure, or sorry, I misspoke. When I saw Ripley pin Liv Morgan, I think we all immediately thought, okay, they're not done with the story. They're going to keep moving. And then the question was presented, well, since Rhea Ripley pinned Liv Morgan, does that mean she's in line for a championship opportunity? Which, I mean, 9 times out of 10, yeah, if you pin the champion, you're in line for a title shot. But I don't want it to discredit Io Sky. Io Sky is my favorite wrestler in the women's division. I love Io Sky's work. So I didn't want to discount her. And I agree with you. I didn't appreciate it because she's the current world champion. And I feel like Liv Morgan, gotta treat it better. Especially as the world champion. I wouldn't have her pinned her. I would have had it like been Bianca Belair pinning Tiffany or Candice LeRae to play it safe. But that's not the route they went. And that storyline clearly isn't finished. Even though I think we're now reaching the point where a lot of people are moving past it. Tyler says, I want to see Zilla Fatu in WWE, man. Wouldn't that be crazy? I think he's on his way. Because, I mean, there was again, I try not to follow too much reports. But they pop up on my timeline. Where Zilla Fatu had certain dates canceled for like GCW. And he was appearing more on Reality of Wrestling, which is Booker T's promotion. And Booker T, obviously, closely works with WWE. He's an NXT commentator. I think within the next year, maybe around WrestleMania, don't be surprised if Zilla Fatu is with the WWE in some capacity. Whether it's an NXT or whether it's on the main roster. I don't know. Zilla Fatu is coming. And to see him, can you imagine him and like Jacob Fatu as a team? Good God. Now that's a team I want to see. But Zilla Fatu is a beast of his own. Kevin says, reminder, it's a title, not a belt. I forgot who said that. Man, that's just an old saying. You know, I feel like a lot of people say it. They say it's a title, not a belt. A belt holds up your pants. But I forget what's the ideology. Some people, I think Vince said it was a belt. I think that's what Vince said. Pat McAfee recently reaffirmed with Cody, because Cody was on, I think it was Game Day Morning for college football, and referred to it as a belt. And Pat McAfee corrected him. He said, it's not a title. I mean, it's not a belt, it's a title. A belt holds up your pants. I'm inclined to believe it is a title. I think it's a championship. A belt holds up your pants. I agree with that. Sanfran 5 says, thoughts on background wrestling videos. Do you mean backyard or background wrestling videos? When it comes to, if it's, I think you mean backyard wrestling. I'd love to hear if you meant background or backyard. Well, I'll answer both. Well, for backyard wrestling, it's out there and it's dangerous. I get it. It's a way for aspiring pro wrestlers to get in the business. And I feel like a lot of our favorites have done background wrestling. Backyard, my bad. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. That's what I thought you meant. Backyard wrestling, when done right, but I feel like a lot of the backyard wrestling that we think of is like Nick Gage. You know, who's like he was like the king of the death match, I should say, before Matt Cardona took that name. Backyard wrestling, it just depends, man, if it's like the safe kind or not. I think it's very dangerous if done incorrectly, which is why I feel like guys like PWG and GCW have done a great job of showcasing a lot of the potential talent. I like watching the videos because it's something different. And I feel like there's like this, for some reason, this fascination for wrestling fans or just people in general. We like seeing violence, whether it's like boxing videos or UFC or WWE. We like seeing fights. So when I see like backyard wrestling and you see guys like go through tables or like the lighting fixtures or thumbtacks, there's just something fascinating about it. So I'm never going to like poo-poo on backyard wrestling because it's a way of living, I guess, but it is out there. Kevin says, nah, bro, I seen some crazy backyard stuff. CCW is legit insanity. CCW, exactly. Combat Zone Wrestling, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like Combat Zone Wrestling is where Nick Gage was like, he nearly died, right? Because of the lighting fixture that punctured his through his skin, and he nearly died. But yeah, CCW, and I think John Moxley too was another guy who came from CCW. It's out there. It is legit crazy stuff. Like, you have to be on another type of level to be going through that. I'm going to travel back real quick. Tyler says, do you have thoughts on WWE ID? I personally think it's an awesome idea for those who aspire to go to WWE. Now, some people have made the argument that it's killing the independent scene. But I like it. Obviously, guys and girls who want to become pro wrestlers, they want to be in the WWE, right? So this allows them kind of like a pipeline to the WWE. They have this opportunity to be identified and have this chance to be associated with WWE and potentially be signed and called up to NXT and therefore the main roster. So I like that they have like the American Nightmare Factory. They have the Black and Brave Academy. They have a Reality of Wrestling. All of those as feeders. I think it's a great opportunity for them. I think so. I'm a fan of it. Tyler says, or he asks, what's next for Hikuleo? When is he coming up? Great question. Because we've seen reports that Hikuleo is on his way. I think he's more in line going to be in NXT. I think the way the Bloodline storyline is, because where else is he going to go? I mean, well, he is associated with the Guerrillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tangaloa. But if he goes to Solo's bloodline, then the OG bloodline is down another person. Hikuleo, I don't know. When would be the Rumble? When would be a good spot for Hikuleo to show up? I feel like NXT would be the move, but they didn't do it for Jacob or for Tama Tonga or Tongaloa. If I had to predict when he appears though, I would think at some point like the Rumble, just in case for the build to WrestleMania. But still, I mean, a man of his size too, because he's a little bit on the taller side. That'd be interesting to see, because you have like Tama Tonga and Tongaloa, who are the tag team specialists there. Jacob Fatu, the Samoan Werewolf. Solo, the leader. I mean, The Rock. If I had to guess, around the Rumble is what I'm thinking. To go back to Backyard Wrestling, Sanford5 says, Zandig would like to have a word with you. Zandig? What a clip from Botchamania. How many people watch, out there watch Botchamania? I haven't seen Botchamania in a minute, but I remember like vividly and avidly watching a lot of the clips on Botchamania and Zandig's promo talking about, you guys know the line if you've seen Botchamania, where he says, Jesus, there was 5 of them. 5 of them. I wonder where is Zandig? And it sounds like some kind of over-the-counter drug too, Zandig. Tyler says, Lance in Hawaii, he's going to NXT too. But he's hurt. That's true. Again, there's so many members within the Anoa'i family and the bloodline, we kind of lose track of who's there and who's not in terms of with the WWE. And Lance Anoa'i I think he's going to I keep saying NXT. I think NXT is the move, right? Because NXT needs the bodies. They need the talent in the men's division. But we talk about Hikuleo, and why wouldn't Hikuleo go with the Guerrillas of Destiny? But then Lance Anoa'i isn't Anoa'i, and Joe Anoa'i is Roman Reigns. So maybe Lance evens out the field. A lot to consider there when it comes to the bloodline. It's a storyline that will never end because there are so many people out there. You talk about Zilla Fatu. There are so many people out there. And then the kids that are coming up, because there's still youngins out there who have to grow up and whether they choose to join the business or not. But Lance Anoa'i, the bloodline never will end. Never will end. Great comments here, great interactions by everyone here in the chat for the post-show reaction to Monday Night Raw. Any more thoughts and concerns or comments, whether it's related to Monday Night Raw or not? I mean, this is great interactions here. Appreciate you guys, as always, for taking the time out of your days to join us here and join the conversation, the discourse that is the WWE. Other news as well, as we await here some comments in the chat. Other news, Dakota Kai advances. She's the first one to move on in the Intercontinental Championship tournament. I like Dakota Kai. I hope she has a good run in this tournament. I'm thinking that in the bracket, she'll probably face off against Raquel Rodriguez just because of how Damage Control is up against Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan. So I'm thinking so. Next week, I believe it was Zelina Vega and Lyra Valkyria and Ivy Nile involved in the triple threat. I'm going to go and predict that Ivy Nile takes the loss via a pin by Lyra Valkyria. But very exciting to see the women's division getting 2 titles, the IC title and the US title. They haven't announced when the finals will take place. We know the US title final will be at Saturday night's main event. So I'm thinking maybe the Raw final will have been obviously on Raw, maybe on the first edition of Monday Night Raw on Netflix. Maybe the final edition of Monday Night Raw. Who knows? But it's certainly something to be excited about for sure. We talked about on Monday Night Raw here how CM Punk's next move will be to enter the Royal Rumble, it seems like, to challenge for the world title and main event WrestleMania, something he's never done. So definitely something to look forward to there. We know that R-Truth beat Pete Dunne. Seth Rollins got the win over Sami Zayn in another competitive matchup, a fun matchup there between 2 of the best in the WWE. Tyler says, did you know that Jacob Fatu has 12 kids? I knew he had a great number. And I mean, like, God bless Jacob Fatu, because that man, if he said, if I have anything to do with it, Jacob Fatu said, "If I have anything to do for it, I'm going to make sure that this bloodline storyline goes on forever. Because with 12 kids, you know, at the minimum, at least one of them is going to be a pro wrestler. But if I had to guess, I mean, you're looking at 4, 5, maybe. Jacob Fatu putting in the work in and out of the ring, if you know what I'm saying." Kevin says, "What's your most memorable WWE return?" Minus Cody Rhodes. His return was special because it was at WrestleMania. Yes, that's a great answer. WrestleMania 38, the lead up to that. And hearing that Cody Rhodes, who had started AEW alongside the Young Bucks and Tony Khan and Kenny Omega, him to make his return to the WWE. And on top of that, basically maintaining the same presentation. You know, keeping the song, keeping the American Nightmare logo and everything. That was awesome. That was so cool to see. To answer your question, what's my most memorable WWE return? I go back to when I was a kid. Because I think obviously a lot of our memories stick out as you know, young kids. And 2008, the Royal Rumble, when John Cena returned at the number 30 spot from the torn pectoral injury. That was certainly something that even my little mind couldn't comprehend. Because we knew he tore his pectoral muscle and that he wasn't going to be able to return in a second. So when he was gone, he got injured in October. It was either late September, early October of 2007. And he returned in January with a torn pec. I even knew as a kid, like, that's crazy. The timetable, I think he was due to miss WrestleMania. So for him to make that return and thinking, is it really him? And then seeing him come out with his head down and then look up and reveal it is him. It's like, wow. Would have never thought. That was one of the first times I remember as a fan thinking, wow, this is awesome. Because of the emotion. And wrestling, at its best, is able to get you to feel. And that Cena return, for me, is one of the more memorable WWE returns. Other ones that are notable, I think Cody Rhodes is a great answer. But other ones for me that stick out, Bret Hart in 2010. I thought that was super cool because it's a name that was so synonymous with controversy regarding the Montreal Screwjob and whether or not him and Shawn could coexist within the same ring. That one was really cool. Tyler says Jacob Fatu, he's making his own bloodline in his own house. Damn right he is. I told you, he for sure was going to ensure if there's going to be a bloodline, it's going to be mine. Sanfran 5 says Jacob Fatu really said real graps, LOL. Damn, yeah, real graps. I mean, for the love of the game. He says we're having 12 kids to ensure the bloodline continues for the love of the game. 12 kids is crazy, though. He has his own lineup for a basketball team, if you think about it. The family reunions are going to be crazy. 12 kids. Other memorable returns, though, what are some of your guys's? In terms of like your favorite memories of someone returning, whether it's something that you saw live or not. I like to go with the live ones because it's, you know, how we feel. I think an obvious answer would be CM Punk last year, something that I personally gave up on. I didn't think Punk would ever come back. Him and the way the fallout how it occurred between he and the WWE, I gave up. I was like, he's not going back. And to see him back and to see the way he's been contributing lately, given the storyline with Drew McIntyre and now with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, seeing him return certainly is up there for me as well. Edge returning was crazy. Yeah. And what I love about the Edge return is in a day and age where social media is exposing everything in the business, it's very hard to keep a secret. We knew there was rumblings of, hey, maybe Edge could make an appearance or whatever. But when Edge came back at the Royal Rumble, to hear the You Think You Know Me and to see him come out, and you could see it in his face. The emotion that he expressed, I'm getting chills thinking about it. Watching it. We were in this very room when it happened. And to see him come out with that level of emotion and just knowing that he unfortunately had to retire due to injury. That return certainly is one of the greatest memories I think the WWE has in certainly in the last 25 years. Another one too, real quick, because I said that he needs to get more credit. Christian, when Christian returned the following year at the Royal Rumble, that was another moment that I enjoyed. Unfortunately, there was no fans in attendance, which was a shame. But seeing him have that moment with Edge in the ring, and I think he made it to like the final 5, maybe final 4 during that Royal Rumble. Christian again needs to get his credit. I love Christian. I'm a big fan of his. Sanford 5 says, we all know the best return is Mae Young's son returning all grown up. Raw 1000. Raw 1000, when Mae Young's son returned. The Hand. One of the more infamous storylines in all of WWE, maybe of all of pro wrestling. That certainly got a pop out of me, seeing him return, and that introduction of where he says, like, oh, hi, I'm Mae Young Sung. And then to see it's a hand. Do you guys remember that? When Mae Young in the Attitude Era had a kid, had a baby with Mark Henry, and all that came out was a hand? Like, talk about some of the more outlandish moments in WWE history. But I'm into it. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a little bit of a guilty pleasure of mine whenever we see outlandish stuff like that. It's so stupid, it's good. You know, you ever seen something where it's so dumb, it's funny? It's crazy. Tyler says, going to my first WWE event, it was fun. In like 3 years, I saw Brock Lesnar and Omos and more. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. To see WWE live is certainly something I think all not even just all pro wrestling fans, but everyone should do, because it's different. It's like a conglomeration of a rock concert meets a sporting event meets movies and entertainment. It's so cool. It's so awesome. I'm glad you were able to enjoy it. You saw Brock Lesnar and Omos, who are two of the biggest guys that WWE has had in recent memory. And I'm glad you had a fun time. That's awesome. That's awesome. I recently went to Monday Night Raw. If you guys haven't seen the video, I kind of uploaded a little bit of a highlight reel of our time watching Monday Night Raw last week. So if you haven't checked that out, please do, and check that out and see what we were able to see from our seats and getting it from a different angle, if anything. Tyler says, mine is CM Punk and Edge 2 solid picks, right? 2 returns that I don't think a lot of people anticipated were going to happen. Edge because of injury, CM Punk because of the personal animosity. Awesome stuff. Kevin says Rey Mysterio's Royal Rumble return was fire. WWE feels more special when Rey is in the ring. It sucks that one day our legends like Randy, Punk, and Mysterio will retire. Another great pick. I remember watching that, the 2018 Royal Rumble, where Rey Mysterio made his return and arguably in the best shape of his life. I mean, he came back looking like ECW Rey Mysterio, just real slim down and again, just in great shape. That return was awesome. What a pop for Rey Mysterio, especially because one of the last times we saw him, he got booed at the Royal Rumble in 2014. So that's a great pick there for another great return. And I do agree. When Rey is there, it's special. He's like a real-life superhero with the mask and the way he connects with the audience. One of, if not the best, baby faces of all time. Love Rey Mysterio. Real cool guy. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to meet him. It is a shame, though, that one day guys like Randy, Punk, Mysterio, obviously Cena, I would, group in there as well. They're all going to retire. But that's why you have to enjoy greatness while you still have them. Because one day it is going to end. I think Randy Orton probably will outlast them all because he says he wants to go till he's 50. But some of our greatest memories as wrestling fans have included those guys. Randy Orton, CM Punk, Mysterio, just legends, titans of the industry. Kevin says Shane McMahon, especially after watching the documentary and realizing he ghosted and parted ways with his dad. Yeah. So it's been said that Shane McMahon is like the normal one in the family. Given what we know about Linda, Vince, Stephanie, we don't know too much, but, seeing that documentary and his relationship with Vince, it was heartbreaking. You know, he really just wanted to have that level of acceptance from Vince, as well as earn his respect and his love. And I think that's what that last run from like 2016 to 2022 was for Shane. To see, especially how Paul Heyman worded it, where there was a time where Vince kind of got confrontational with Shane and saying that if you want to take this company from me, you're going to have to, insinuating that he's going to have to kill him. And I don't know, just the relationship between Vince and Shane certainly is interesting. And I think it's a shame what it led to. And like you said, realizing that he's parted ways with his dad, it's sad. It really is. And it sucks that they kind of outed Shane from the business, because if you remember in 2009, he had left the WWE and ventured to have some kind of partnership with the UFC, and that didn't go through. And it's ironic now because the UFC and the WWE work together because they're both owned by Endeavor, and they formed together to form TKO. Shane was ahead of the game. Shane was ahead of the game in that. And also, if you guys weren't aware, he was also ahead of the game in terms of presenting the WWE on online. You know, they wanted to branch out to WWE.com, which in itself is basically what they do now when it comes to the network, when it comes to speed. They're presenting wrestling on the internet now, when like it's X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Shane doesn't get enough love either. In terms of the McMahon family, Shane doesn't get enough credit for that. What are some of your guys' favorite memories regarding Shane McMahon? I think certainly one of the first ones that comes to mind, and I think Sanfran 5 will agree with me here, King of the Ring, 2001, Shane McMahon versus Kurt Angle in that street fight. And seeing Shane McMahon getting thrown through the, like the stage several times. And I'm sure you guys, if you're as diehard fans as I am, I'm sure you guys know the story. Shane McMahon gets thrown through it. They're thinking it's sugar glass, and it's not. It's real glass, so they have to throw Shane in multiple times. He suffers a concussion because he falls on his head. Shane McMahon is another one of those guys, did it for the love of the game. But because he was the boss's son, he had to overcompensate to earn that respect. That's why he would do those daredevil-like stunts, whether it was falling off of the SummerSlam structure in 2000, whether it was taking those bumps at King of the Ring. He was always willing to put his body on the line, because he wasn't a Kurt Angle. He wasn't a Stone Cold Steve Austin who had the drawing power. What he had was fearless. That lack of fear that allowed him to accomplish these feats. Batista deserved better in his return in 2014. I'm not the biggest Daniel Bryan fan. Lesnar versus Bryan was money, though. That's funny that you say that you're not the biggest Daniel Bryan fan. I haven't encountered a lot of people who would say they're not the biggest Bryan fan. I myself, I'm a big fan. Love Bryan Danielson. I'm a big fan of his work. His style of wrestling, now that's my cup of tea right there. But I do agree that Batista deserved better in that run in 2014. That's a shame. But again, I blame it on booking. You guys had Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan in a clear position to be the guy. They wanted Batista. The fans didn't. So yeah, it's a shame that was his last run. Obviously in 2019, he had his last match against Triple H. But Batista, again, another one of those GOATs where I can remember watching SmackDown and waiting for him to come out with the big gold in hand. And he did his entrance with like the machine gun entrance where he would oh man, Batista, prime Batista was out of this world. Love Dave Batista. Should be in the Hall of Fame. Even though technically he was going to be in it, but they never had that ceremony. Big fan of Batista. As for Brock Lesnar versus Bryan, yeah, I agree. That Survivor Series matchup was, I think, one of Brock's best matches. He does very well against smaller opponents, whether it was like a CM Punk, whether it's against a Bryan Danielson. Brock Lesnar has always had great chemistry with smaller opponents. Sanford 5 says, for the love of God, he got his nuts electrocuted. He did. This is true. This is true. Against Kane, 2003. What a moment, right? Crazy how we never got Prime Batista versus Lesnar. The closest I believe we ever got to it might have been the Royal Rumble event in 2003, when in the Final Four, it was Lesnar, Batista, The Undertaker, and Kane. But isn't that crazy that we never got it? Because when Brock Lesnar was on top, from 02 to 04, Batista was still breaking into the main roster as a member of Evolution. They were on separate brands. By the time that Brock Lesnar came back in 2012, Batista was already gone. And then obviously he had his return in 2014 and 2019. It just didn't line up. But imagine that, Batista versus Lesnar? Wow. Talk about Clash of the Titans. Tyler says, imagine Batista in his prime versus Braun Breaker now. Yeah. Oh my God. Braun Breaker versus a lot of guys. Braun Breaker versus a Batista. Fantastic. Against Brock Lesnar. Ridiculous. He's a freak of nature. He's an athletic freak. Braun Breaker, again, like a Jacob Fatu. Exactly. Like a Braun Breaker is insane. Him versus Fatu needs to be booked. The interaction that they had when the Bloodline interfered in that Intercontinental title matchup between Breaker and Jey Uso. Having Fatu versus Breaker, I'm sure it was something that a lot of fans were thinking of, but when we got the interaction between the two, I did not know how badly I needed Braun Breaker versus Fatu. Two freaks of nature. Two future world champions. But whenever that happens, I don't know. What's the stipulation there? Anything goes. Last man standing. Man, that Braun Breaker. Imagine the counters. The spears, the speed, the moonsaults. Now that's a match that I certainly would pay money for. Braun Breaker versus Jacob Fatu. Their names are fire. Yeah. Or add Bronson Reed into the match. Now that's a lot of meat. That's a lot of meat. You add Bronson Reed into that? Bronson Reed. Man, as a triple threat, Bronson Reed, Jacob Fatu, Braun Breaker. They're all unique names. I agree, they are unique names. I'm a fan of it. Who would go over? In the current state, who would go over? Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker, and Fatu. I think it'd have to be Fatu, right? I'm a fan of all three, and I could see all three winning. But I think just the way that they presented Jacob Fatu, I think he'd go over. I think he'd probably pin like Bronson Reed, because I think Braun Breaker would be next in terms of like ranking the potential of the three. Certainly Bronson Reed is fantastic. The way they've booked him in the last 6 months, great. Gunther too? We'll see now. If you put Gunther, I think Gunther has to go over. But what a contrast of styles here. Because you have Bronson Reed, who is the brute force. He is a hulking figure of a man, right? A bowling ball figure of a man. Bronson Reed, and then you have Braun Breaker, who the speed and the ferocity of Braun Breaker match with the freak athleticism of Jacob Fatu. And then you have Gunther. Give them an hour. Give them an hour. Like how NXT did that 1 hour long fatal four-way matchup between, I believe it was Gargano, Ciampa, it might have been Cole and O'Reilly. Give them an hour. Kevin's asking, what is your favorite crossover? AJ Styles crossing over to the WWE was so good. I mean, that might be the answer. If we're going modern era, which I'm going to go because obviously it's not fair for me to say, like, oh, remember when Hogan jumped over to WCW? That's not really fair because, that was so long ago. AJ crossing over to the WWE is monumental. because for a lot of people, rightfully so, he's Mr. TNA. So to see him in the WWE is something that I don't think a lot of people thought would happen. And I think it only elevated his legacy as a pro wrestler. He was able to win the IC title, the US title, more importantly, the WWE title on a couple occasions. AJ Styles is a generational talent. You put him in any generation, and he's succeeding. I love that answer, but I kind of want to give another one just because I don't want to, I want to introduce other topics here as well. What about, okay, hear me out. What about Sting? Not as successful. It was not as successful as the AJ Styles crossover, but having Sting cross over to the WWE following the fallout of WCW, following TNA, it is something that, again, another thing that I gave up on. I didn't think he was ever going to show up. And him debuting, again, was one of those things where I was able to actually avoid the dirt sheets and the reports. So him debuting was a surprise for me. Seeing Sting in WWE was crazy. Unfortunately, it didn't last long, and it wasn't that great. He had a match against Triple H, which he should have won, and then he had a match against Seth Rollins in which he had to retire temporarily because he had a good run in AEW following that. So maybe Sting, who again is another guy where you can consider a TNA legend. Tyler says, rest in peace, Bray Wyatt, bro. Bray Wyatt documentary is so sad. Rest in peace to Bray Wyatt. Absolutely. Bray Wyatt, just so unique in terms of his creativity, his creative mind. Those early days of the Wyatt family where they were out in the swamp and he had the colorful like Hawaiian shirt and the fedora and then just the promo style. And then you fast forward to his time as the Fiend, his time in the Firefly Funhouse. What was the vision for Uncle Howdy? It's unfortunate what happened to Bray Wyatt. And they say that you should, like I said, appreciate them while you have them, but it's not something I think anybody could have imagined what happened to Bray. Gone way too soon. But certainly his legacy lives on through his brother, Taylor Rotunda, better known as Uncle Howdy, and Bo Dallas. But Bray Wyatt was special. Rest in peace to Bray Wyatt. Kevin says Samoa Joe. Yeah, another great option there. When he made the jump to NXT, great pickup. Again, someone that I didn't think we were going to see in the WWE. And we finally got him. And the rest is history. It's just a shame that he was presented so much better on NXT than the WWE. Should have won the WWE title. You could argue he could have won the Universal title. Do you remember when he was in that feud against Brock Lesnar? I believe it was Great Balls of Fire in 2017. Right then and there, that should have been when they crowned Samoa Joe the Universal Champion. It's ridiculous that they didn't capitalize on him. He would go on to be a future AEW champion. But the way WWE fumbled Samoa Joe needs to be studied. Tyler asks if I have any thoughts on Vince McMahon. He fumbled him. Any thoughts on it? I love Uncle Howdy. He's killing it now. Vince McMahon, see, the problem with him is he was just so stuck in his ways. And they say that he lived in a bubble that was the WWE. He didn't consume any other type of media or any other type of content. And once you reach a certain age, you don't want to change things. You want to keep them the way they are. And I think that's what happened with Vince, which I think is so good. And I'm so grateful that he's no longer with them because we're getting fresh ideas, stuff that's contemporary, stuff that is relevant to today's society. And especially as pro wrestling fans, we're being exposed to more things that we want to see. Whereas with Vince, remember the last few years with Vince where we saw someone like Chad Gable being presented as Shorty G, or seeing Roman Reigns getting dog food piled all over him. Or even if you remember Bobby Lashley's segment with I believe it was Sami Zayn, where he had like the three sisters of Bobby Lashley. Like there was certain stuff that Vince was providing from like 2019 to 2022 that was questionable. Like what was he thinking in his senile mind? I'll give him his credit. Vince McMahon, some of his greatest ideas were great, but some of his worst ideas were god awful. And I think we're better off with Triple H, handling creative right now. Tyler says, I miss Keith Lee. I miss Keith Lee too, and it's one of the greatest mysteries of what would have been with Keith Lee. He had a great run in NXT, winning the North American title and the NXT championship simultaneously. And to see again, that's another thing with Vince. When he presented Keith Lee as like Bearcat Keith Lee, why? He was doing so well in NXT as Limitless Keith Lee. And why? They changed him and it essentially killed all his momentum. I go back to Survivor Series. Remember in 2019, we talked about it, where NXT invaded and they had the 5 versus 5 versus 5, and the final 2, Keith Lee versus Roman Reigns. And they went toe-to-toe against each other and provided one of the best finishes in a Survivor Series traditional matchup. Had all the momentum. Then you go to the Royal Rumble in 2020, and he had that great face-off against Brock Lesnar. They killed his momentum. And now where's Keith Lee? He went to All Elite Wrestling, but we haven't seen him in so long. I hope everything's okay. If it's a personal issue, if it's a health scare, we don't know. So I hope he's doing well. I wish him nothing but the best. But it does annoy me the way that they fumbled Keith Lee. Specifically Vince, because everything ran through him. Keith Lee, again, another one of those guys who had the charisma. He had the moveset. He had the potential to be a star in the WWE, and they fumbled it. Bearcat Keith Lee. I will never forget seeing that and thinking, what the heck are they doing? But again, he's signed to All Elite Wrestling, had a tag team title run with Swerve Strickland, and aside from that, we don't know what happened. That's another thing with AEW. Sometimes it's like, what are they doing over there? Again, I can't assume, because maybe it's in his personal life or it's an injury. Again, we wish him the best. But it boggles my mind that there's some talent out there, like a Keith Lee, who does. And again, Tyler mentions Miro. Miro's another one. Whether it's WWE or AEW. Let's go back to WWE. Rusev Day got so over. Rusev and Aiden English managed to get something as silly as Rusev Day over. And they gave him a US title run that was very brief. And then his marriage to Lana was presented on TV. And they had him feud with freaking Bobby Lashley, who I love. I'm a fan of Bobby Lashley. I love what the Hurt Syndicate is doing right now. But then they have Lana basically break up with Rusev, go with Bobby, and they consistently embarrassed Rusev, buried his momentum, and threw him away, forcing him to go to AEW. Why do they do that? Why do they kill? Or I should say back then, why would they do that? Kill momentum. When everyone was on the side of Rusev, people pushed him in 2014 when he debuted. And they thought he was going to be a world champion. He was a dominant US champion that had a good match against Cena. And we're thinking he's going to be a world champion. but they buried his momentum. And then AEW had him run with the TNT title, which is cool. I like the Redeemer stuff. I really like the Redeemer stuff. His stuff with Eddie Kingston, I enjoyed. And then they brought back Lana, CJ Perry. And then from then, again, the momentum was lost. Tyler says maybe it's mental health issues. Yeah. I mean, that's a possibility. We don't know. Tyler's 100% right, though. It could be that. And of course, it's nothing but speculation because we don't know for sure. All we can do is hope that they're doing well and that eventually they are in a state where they are happy and they are healthy, because above all else, that's what matters most. Tyler says, how about Dolph Ziggler too? Man, we're just going to start ranting today, aren't we, huh, Tyler? Dolph Ziggler had everything. The look, the athleticism. He was over with the crowd, whether it was a baby face or heel. They gave him a shot and gave him the money in the bank. He had one of the best cash-ins on Del Rio. Won the world title. Unfortunately, had a couple of concussions that, again, slowed down his momentum. He had a great moment at the Survivor Series in 2014 where he was the sole survivor for Team Cena. And that was the peak. That was the height of his powers. He never really got a fair shake at the main event scene. This is a guy who had all the talent in the world. And he could sell like no one else. Oh my God, like Dolph Ziggler he should have been a legend in the WWE. But it wasn't meant to be. Tyler says, I'm so happy about Dolph. He's in TNA. And it's going to be fire. Yeah, when Dolph Ziggler made the jump, he goes by Nick Nemeth now, his real name. And he's been the TNA champion since the spring, I believe. Was it Rebellion? I think he might have won it at. He's been the TNA World Champion. And I'm so happy that Nick Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler, is getting that opportunity that he sorely earned in the WWE. So maybe with this run, he has a great run as a TNA champion, puts on banger of matches. Maybe that opens the door for him to return to the WWE, like a Drew McIntyre, like Cody Rhodes. I mean, he is a little older, but they say distance makes the heart grow fonder. Maybe that's what he needs. Maybe that's what he needs. But Dolph Ziggler, again, another guy who didn't get a fair shake and just had his momentum derailed. He was stuck in tag teams with Robert Roode, the Dirty Dogs. And I like Robert Roode. I got nothing against him. But when you have those two paired up to do nothing, his last great feat in WWE, he won the NXT Championship. Remember that? Before he dropped it to Braun Breaker. They were using NXT almost as a way to heat him up and give him momentum while also giving NXT the rub. But unfortunately, Ziggler's gone. He's with TNA. And he's doing great in TNA. Him and his brother having that opportunity to work together is awesome. And hopefully they're better off for it, working in TNA. That was really good. I appreciate the discourse there. We talked about Ziggler and Keith Lee and Miro. But it's true. When it comes to that kind of stuff, it's a shame that you had so much talent and essentially did nothing with them. There are always going to be those what ifs. Great comments there, great questions. Adjusting my chair. But yeah, a really good episode of Monday Night Raw tonight. A fun episode. They're going to start building up momentum here. We're heading towards Saturday night's main event. Royal Rumble's around the corner. WrestleMania 41 not too far behind. We're going to start bringing this episode of the post-show reaction slowly to a close here. A lot of great interactions here in regards to questions and comments. A lot of great feedback. A lot of great topics for discussion, especially that of the Keith Lee and Miro missed opportunities. I really enjoyed that. That was awesome, Tyler. Way to bring that up. Again, keep an eye out. We're going to have a NXT Deadline predictions video coming out more likely Wednesday. We have Friday Night SmackDown, where we will be sharing our thoughts on the post-show reaction, the live stream that will follow SmackDown. Look for it at around 11:15 p.m. Arizona time. We have NXT Deadline this weekend, so make sure to look out for another live stream there following NXT Deadline. We always do about 15 to 20 minutes following the event, and we'll discuss the fallout of NXT Deadline, who are the winners of the Iron Survivors, who will be challenging for their respective NXT and Women's Championships there. If you haven't already, make sure you check out the J Area podcast, where we further went into a deep dive of what had happened at the Survivor Series, as well as what we could expect moving forward in the WWE. Like, for example, talked about The Rock, talked about Cody Rhodes and his direction leading to WrestleMania. Go ahead and make sure you check out that stuff as well. It was a lot of fun producing that episode, so I look forward to see what you guys think about in terms of that episode. As we bring a close here, Tyler has something else to say. He says, I don't like AEW Death Riders with Jon Moxley. Any thoughts on it? I live in Arizona too. Hey, right on. A couple of people from Arizona. We know nothing but the heat. We know nothing about the heat here in Arizona. You got work tomorrow. Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying it's getting kind of late, man. But you know what? Like I said, you called in, you answered, and you asked about AEW Death Riders. I'm going to share my thoughts real quick on that. I like the concept. I like Jon Moxley. I like the concept of the Death Riders wanting to reestablish kind of dominance in AEW, and they were sick and tired of people dancing and singing and parading around without a sense of urgency in AEW. I like the concept. With that being said, we need to see something new. We keep getting the same attacks. We keep getting the same kind of interactions. We know that ultimately it's going to lead to Darby Allin versus Jon Moxley for that title. I'm not totally off the bandwagon when it comes to the Death Riders, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I can see why people aren't satisfied with it. I also don't like, there was one thing I didn't like. I don't know if you recall this, Tyler, but there was an episode of Dynamite where they said that Jon Moxley and the Death Riders were going to seize the TBS Superstation. That was blatant false advertisement, because they just went to the ring and cut a promo. Like, the concept is there. It's just sometimes the execution, it's not there. But I'm willing to give them a shot. You got to wait it out. So long as they're able to transition this championship to Darby Allin, like I think they should, in a way that is entertaining and successful, all will be forgiven. I'm very easy to get along with in terms of my pro wrestling. But Jon Moxley's cool. You say you like Jon Moxley. I like Jon Moxley too. I'm a fan. Ever since his time as Dean Ambrose in NXT and FCW, I'm a fan. So I'm willing to give him a shot here. But AEW has a lot of things that they have to fix. I would love to get more into detail about All Elite Wrestling and my concerns with them. So maybe potentially I'll do some kind of reaction to Dynamite, or just I would love to do another video like this where it's just Ask Me Anything. And we just talk about a lot of things, whether it's AEW or WWE related. Like I said, as we bring it to a close, Tyler with another great point here. He says, I think Tony Khan needs to focus on storytelling, and I agree. He needs to focus on that. AEW, I was going to say TNA. AEW's mantra is it's where the best wrestle. They focus so much more on in-ring quality, which is fine. They do have great wrestlers. They do have great matches. But it's tough to get invested in these matches when the stories aren't there. They think there's two frames of thought, that wrestling is purely in the ring or its storylines, and it's a combination of both. The WWE, the way they do it, is so good because they prioritize storytelling and then they deliver good matches. Whereas AEW, they're delivering great matches, but it's like, why are they fighting? I need to get invested in this matchup. I need to get invested in who's involved. Otherwise, what the hell am I doing? Why should I invest my time in this? One complaint, my brother, who you guys know as San Fran 5, he likes to make the point that AEW does a lot of time limit draws. And that's fine. I like the idea of a time limit draw. It's something unique. Especially when you have two great athletes going against each other and they both can't lose. But they do it too often. And when you do something too often, it's not special anymore. Case in point, you know what I really don't like about AEW? What gets on my nerves is the 10 count. Because a lot of times they'll overdo the whole, oh, is he going to make it to the ring? And the referee's counting to 10. And he's 9.5, and he makes it in the ring. I get it. That's an aspect of the matchup. But there was one event, I think it might have been Full Gear, where they did that spot like in 3 different matches. And then there are other matches where the referee doesn't enforce the count out. Maybe that's just me nitpicking, but I don't know. That's just me, I guess. AEW tickets too, that's the issue. AEW has a lot of problems. Their attendance is ridiculous. What they need to do, All Elite Wrestling needs to focus more on smaller venues. There's nothing wrong with that. Look at a place like NXT. Look at a place like ECW, who thrived in smaller venues. It allowed the crowd to become so into it that it was thunderous. Smaller venues, louder fans. Because when you're opening it up to these big arenas, and you're not even filling up a quarter of them, it's bad optics. It's bad optics. It doesn't look good. You can't present yourself as a real competitor against the WWE when you can't even fill up half an arena. And that's not me bashing AEW. I'm not those fans who is like trashing AEW. But it's me as a fan of pro wrestling. I want to see everyone succeed. I want to see the alternative do well because it forces WWE to improve. My roommate, he hates Tony Khan in AEW. I mean, your roommate's entitled to his opinion. I don't hate AEW. But sometimes I hate how Tony Khan runs it. Tony Khan, first of all, he needs to establish like authority. The fact that he has guys like the Young Bucks and, you know, other guys like John Moxley and such, Mercedes Moné is another one. They have such a hand on their creative. That's risky, you know. Tony Khan, when it's done right, it's awesome. When it's not done right, it's really bad. I still have AEW, bro. I'm not hating on AEW and Tony Khan. Yeah, I'm a fan. I would not be watching this show if I wasn't a fan. I like AEW. I enjoy their matches. It's just little things, man. Little things that you can fix. That's all. It's not like they're doomed. I'm not selling them out for bankruptcy just yet. I mean, you're a fan. I'm a fan. We want to see them do well. Not because I prefer them over WWE or because I prefer WWE over AEW. But it's like I said, I just want to see quality wrestling. I just want to see everyone do well because when everyone's doing well, the business is doing well. San Fran 5 says, Tony Khan does coke. Ain't no way he's always smiling and happy. You know what's the problem? Tony Khan, a lot of times he will try to project a lot of positivity onto AEW. He tries to avoid the negative aspects of the business, and he'll always talk about like, oh, we're doing great business, or we did such a great show. We have a great show ahead of us here at AEW Dynamite. We have our world champion taking on the undefeated whoever, and he does it in such a way where it's disingenuous. It's like, Tony, you don't have to. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's a front. He is just way too damn happy and smiling. And that's fine. You want to present your company in a positive light. That's totally fine. But it's just sometimes it's just disingenuous. I want MLW to get a TV deal, bro. Yeah. I mean, that would be awesome. To see MLW get a TV deal. To see like TNA get a quality TV deal. To see all these companies get these deals and be more accessible to the public, that's awesome. We want to see people succeed. Now, on the flip side, it's difficult because there's just so much pro wrestling out there to keep up with, you know? But I'm with you. I want to see guys like MLW, guys like GCW get these deals and make it more accessible. Because not only is it great for wrestling fans to enjoy, but it's great for the wrestlers because you're giving them more job opportunities. You're giving them more chances to provide for their families, to fill up their pockets, make an impression, and reach some kind of mainstream stardom potentially. You want to see the business grow. On that note, we're gonna call it here. Appreciate you guys. Hold on. I think Tony Khan, he needs to focus on his dad NFL team and is owner of the Jags. Either that or just focus on on AEW. You can't pick both lanes. Gotta pick one over the other. Great interactions there by Tyler, Sanfran5. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Kevin, Laura was also here. We missed Alex today. Appreciate you guys always stopping by for the post-show reaction. We had a great live stream here. I like to do more live streams and have more conversations with you guys. I might be doing more so often. Maybe not necessarily just post-show reactions, but just an open forum, open discussion to talk about whatever it is we want to talk about. Who knows? Maybe I'll do live episodes of the J Area podcast, or like I said, other live streams where it's like Ask Me Anything, or just discuss pro wrestling. But we're going to call it there, guys. Appreciate you guys stopping by, talking pro wrestling with us, joining the discussion, joining the discourse. Of course, if you haven't already, make sure you check out the J Area podcast episode where we talk about the fall of the Survivor Series, the lead up to Saturday night's main event. Keep an eye out for the NXT Deadline prediction show, as well as the fallout of NXT Deadline this Saturday. And with that being said, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you for joining me on today's live stream. We will all see you guys this Friday night following Friday Night SmackDown. And we'll see you there on the live reaction and the post show. Thank you guys again. Much love and appreciation. We'll see you guys then.